They say the greatest battle a warrior ever fights isn't on the blood-soaked fields of war, with shield and spear in hand. No, the real battle happens in the quiet chambers of the heart. In that moment when a warrior lays down his weapon for a love so powerful it threatens to rewrite his entire legacy. In the old days, love was never seen as a weakness. It was the ultimate test of strength, the final trial for any true champion. This is the story of a man who could defeat entire armies, a man who brought kingdoms to their knees, but who willingly surrendered to the power of a single woman. His name was K-like, champion of the mighty kingdom of Ejana. The name itself was a war cry, a promise of victory. On the battlefield, K-like was an unstoppable force of nature. He had never lost a single battle. He had never shown mercy, never spared an enemy. His reputation preceded him like a storm front. The people of his own kingdom feared him almost as much as his enemies fled from him. But for all his victories, for all his strength, K-like carried a silent, heavy curse. He was a man utterly and completely unloved. His life was a cold, solitary existence, defined by violence and conquest. Then came the day that changed everything. During a brutal raid on a rival village, as chaos and fear swirled around him, K-like came face to face with a young woman named Zainab. But unlike the others, she did not scream. She did not cower or beg for her life. Instead, she stood her ground, her gaze firm and unwavering. She looked him directly in the eyes, her voice clear and steady amidst the sounds of battle, and said, "If you must kill me, then do it. But know this: when you die, you will still die unloved." Her words struck him with a force greater than any spear, piercing the armor he wore not just on his body, but around his heart. For the first time in his life, K-like was disarmed not by a weapon, but by a truth he could not fight. He saw not an enemy, but a reflection of his own desolate soul. And in that moment, something inside him shifted. Instead of bringing his sword down upon her, he spared her. He spared her entire village. That night, for the first time in a generation, the drums of war fell silent. Peace, fragile and unexpected, slept across the land, but K-like could not forget her. He couldn't forget her eyes or the crushing weight of her words. He found himself drawn back to her village, not as a conqueror, but as a man searching for something he couldn't name. He returned in secret under the cloak of darkness again and again. He and Zainab would meet by the quiet river, far from the watchful eyes of warriors and elders. They didn't speak of war or conquest. They spoke of harvests and sunsets, of dreams for a future that didn't involve bloodshed. They spoke of a life beyond the battlefield. And in the warmth of her company, for the very first time in his hardened life, the great warrior, K-like, laughed. A true, genuine laugh that echoed through the trees, startling the birds. It was a sound more beautiful and more terrifying than any war horn. However, this newfound peace was not to last. The spirits of the land, ancient and protective of the old ways, grew restless. They had thrived on the kingdom's strength on K-like's victories. This change, this shift towards peace and love, angered them. A dark prophecy began to spread through the kingdom, whispered by priests and diviners. A chilling warning that echoed in the halls of the palace. If K-like chooses love, if the champion forsakes his spear for a woman's hand, his kingdom will fall. The prophecy ignited fear. Old enemies, sensing weakness and emboldened by the whispers of Ajana's doom, began to stir. Armies that had long been dormant started to gather at the borders, their numbers swelling like a gathering storm. He ordered K-like to once again lead the armies of Ejana into war, to crush their enemies and restore the balance of power. The fate of the kingdom rested on his shoulders once more. Zainab heard the news and her heart broke. She pleaded with him. "Leave this life behind," she begged. "Run away with me. We can find a quiet place, a small corner of the world where no one knows the name K-like the warrior. We can live a simple life, a life of peace." He was torn between his duty and his heart, between the kingdom that made him and the woman who remade him. The morning of the battle arrived. The sky was a grim, unforgiving gray. Two massive armies stood facing each other across a vast plain, the air thick with tension and the promise of death. K-like, dressed in his fearsome battle armor, walked to the front of his warriors. The entire world held its breath. The enemy commander watched, ready for the charge. But then K-like did the unthinkable. In full view of both armies, he unstrapped his sword and let it fall to the ground. Then he took his legendary spear, the symbol of his invincibility, and laid it gently in the dust. He turned to face the stunned enemy army and his own bewildered soldiers, his voice ringing out across the silent field. "I have taken enough lives," he declared. "My hands have caused enough sorrow. Let my death today end this cycle of violence." "I will not fight." The enemy generals were speechless. They had prepared for a bloody war, not a sacrifice. This act of ultimate surrender, of choosing peace over power, was so profound, so unexpected, that it baffled them. They saw no honor in striking down an unarmed man who had offered his life to stop the bloodshed. Confused and humbled, the enemy armies withdrew. The spirits of the land, satisfied by this ultimate sacrifice of pride and violence, were appeased. Peace, a true and lasting peace, returned to the land. K-like and Zainab disappeared. They left the world of kings and kingdoms behind, finding a small, quiet life far away from the echoes of war. His name, once the most feared in the land, slowly faded from the war songs and epic poems. For more stories that touch the heart and stir the soul, make sure you subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching.